In a vibrant city nestled within Nigeria, a woman named Amaka lived her life with purpose and love. She was the proud mother of a beautiful daughter named Chidinma. Chidinma had recently stepped into the blissful world of marriage, tying the knot with a charming man named Uche. Their union was filled with laughter, dreams, and the promise of a bright future ahead. Amaka was delighted to see her daughter so happy, and she often visited Chidinma and Uche at their cozy home. As time went on, however, life took an unexpected turn. Amaka fell gravely ill, and her condition alarmed Chidinma. Overwhelmed with worry, the devoted daughter decided it was time to bring her mother from their village to the city for better medical care. Chidinma packed her mother's belongings with great care, making sure to include all the comforts of home, and they embarked on the journey together. Once they arrived in the city, Chidinma immediately took Amaka to a well-known hospital. The doctors assessed her mother's condition and began treatment. Chidinma insisted on staying by Amaka's side, supporting her through the long hours in the hospital. Uche, being a caring husband, frequently checked in on them, bringing warm meals and ensuring they had everything they needed. Often, he would listen to Amaka reminisce about her village life, sharing stories with laughter that warmed them. As Amaka began her recovery, the bond between her and Uche grew stronger. They chuckled together, and Uche often sat with Amaka for hours, listening to her tales. Chidinma would watch this growing companionship with a mixture of happiness and gratitude. It warmed her heart to see her mother feeling better, but beneath that warmth lay an unsettling sense of unease that she couldn't quite put her finger on. Days turned into weeks, and as Amaka's health improved, she was able to move around the house with more independence. When Chidinma went to work, Uche would often stay back to keep Amaka company. They would pass the time sharing jokes and, more often than not, deep conversations about life, love, and dreams. It seemed innocent enough to Chidinma at the time, and she felt a sense of relief seeing both her mother and her husband bonding in this way. So she saw nothing wrong with the bond. One fateful evening, after a long day at work, Chidinma returned home eager to spend time with her family. However, as she entered her bedroom, she heard muffled voices coming from inside. Confusion washed over her as she pushed the door slightly open. To her utter horror, she discovered Uche and Amaka together, their laughter fading into shocked silence as they froze in place, bodies intertwined on the bed that held so many of her dreams. Her heart raced as she took a moment to process everything. Amaka, her mother, quickly sat up, her face a mix of shock and guilt. "Chidinma, please, let me explain," she pleaded, but Chidinma's world was crumbling into chaos. "Explain what? How you could betray me like this? You are my mother, and he is my husband." Heavy words weighed down the air between them, engulfing Chidinma in an overwhelming storm of emotions. "You are a disgrace to women, and I am ashamed to call you my mother. As for you, Chinedu, I see the only place to find pleasure is in her HM." Feeling consumed by rage and heartbreak, Chidinma packed her mother's belongings that very night. "I can't look at you both anymore," she sobbed, sending Amaka back to the village where it all began. She felt a heavy weight on her chest. She was performing the hardest task of her life, but in her heart, she believed that it was the only way to heal. As Amaka was leaving, she glanced back at Chidinma, her eyes filled with sorrow, but the deed was done. In the aftermath of the betrayal, Chidinma couldn't bear staying with Uche. The love she once felt for him had twisted into something dark and painful. Holding her head high, she made the difficult decision to divorce him, hoping to reclaim her life and rebuild herself from the remnants of the heartache. She wanted to move forward, to find strength in her pain, and to live for herself once more. She has sacrificed a lot in her marriage. It was time for her to move on with life. With each passing day, the silence in her home screamed louder than the memories. Chidinma sought solace in her friends, often pouring her heart out, trying to grasp what had happened. Yet no matter how much she talked, the image of her mother in bed with her husband haunted her. Meanwhile, in the village, Amaka was met with cruel whispers and mocking laughter. The villagers had caught wind of the scandal, and instead of offering any sympathy, they ridiculed her. Look at her, a disgrace to motherhood, they would say, tossing their disdainful glances her way. Amaka, once a proud woman, now felt the sting of shame deep in her soul. Friends turned to strangers, and the comfort of her village seemed to turn hostile. Wicked soul, after everything her daughter did for her. The weight of their mockery bore down on Amaka, and her heart sank in despair. She thought about her daughter, the joy they once shared, and how her actions had shattered that bond. Amaka felt alone, unable to escape the judgment of the villagers, nor could she face her daughter again after the betrayal. In her darkest hour, she believed there was no way forward, no chance for redemption. She said to herself, "I cannot even forgive myself for destroying my own daughter's life. God forgive me." On a still, quiet morning, Amaka made a heartbreaking choice. In her mind, it was the only escape from the pain that engulfed her. The village that once embraced her now felt like a prison with no way out. As the sun rose, Amaka took her own life, leaving behind nothing but a heartbreaking silence. The news of her death reached Chidinma days later, and it shook her world once more. Amaka cried her eyes out. Although she hasn't forgiven her mother, but she never wished her death. When Chidinma learned of her mother's fate, grief washed over her in waves, drowning her in regret. She felt like she had just started rebuilding, but now she had lost her mother forever. She rushed to the village, her heart heavy with mingled emotions. Standing by her mother's grave, Chidinma was surrounded by the whispers and snickers of the villagers who had once known her family with respect. "Mama, why did you take your own life?" Chidinma cried. "Why, mother? Why did this have to happen?" she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. In that moment of solitude, she vowed to reclaim her life and not allow hate and betrayal to define her. She had suffered enough, the scars would remain, but the pain would not hold her hostage forever. As the days turned into weeks, Chidinma made peace with her mother's actions while understanding that everyone is human and makes mistakes. This complex web of love, betrayal, and forgiveness began to weave itself into her heart. She channeled her pain into her work, community service, and helping other women who faced betrayal in their lives. Chidinma learned not only to forgive her mother in death but to embrace the life lessons that the tragedy had brought her. It wasn't about forgetting, it was about moving forward with strength. She often spoke about her experiences, turning her grief into inspiration for others facing hardships. The road was long and winding, but she carried her mother's memory with her, determined to transform her sorrow into something hopeful. In the end, life continued. Chidinma found moments of joy amid her pain. She rebuilt her story, one day at a time, with the understanding that every challenge was a chance for growth. Her heart grew tender, not only toward her mother but also toward herself. Time marched on, and amid the shadows of loss, she discovered the light of resilience and hope shining bright in the depths of her spirit.